name is Catherine. I work with Press Ganey, and I also am the partner to the amazing Mount Sinai team who is here to present today. They're going to share how their very provider-centric strategy towards transparency has transformed their organization. I hope you guys are ready to walk away with some very practical tips, some suggestions and thoughts as you all navigate your own journey towards transparency. Please join me in welcoming Isadora Braun and Kristen Morales.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and good morning, everybody. As Catherine mentioned, my name is Isadora Braun. I'm the Associate Director of Patient Experience at the Mount Sinai Health System, and I'm here with my wonderful colleague, Kristen Morales, Associate Director of Digital Marketing. And today we wouldn't be up here on the stage without our leadership support, so I just want to name a couple of folks: Erica Rubenstein, John Davey, Dr. Bruce Darrow, Robbie Freeman, Ann Dickerson. Without them, none of this would be possible, so I just wanted to give that moment of appreciation. So as you're walking in today, one of our wonderful colleagues might have passed you a slip of paper, or you might have seen it on your chair, and that's not a piece of trash. That is our pre-presentation activity. So if you haven't had a moment yet, I suggest you take out your phones, and we'll give you a couple minutes now to participate in it. And what we're doing is we're inviting you to open up your favorite or your special AI-powered search engine. That could be your ChatGPT, that can be your Copilot, and to search the following prompt. Show me a list of cardiologists in your organization, in your state, that have a 4.5 rating or higher, comma, who treat high blood pressure and have availability in the next 30 days. I'll give you guys a moment to do that and to maybe look through those search results or that output. I'll actually repeat the prompt. It's going to be, show me a list of cardiologists in my organization, in my state, who have a 4.5 rating or higher, who treat high blood pressure, and have availability in the next 30 days. Now, I might be the only person on this planet that is literally still mesmerized and completely terrified at how quickly that thing is able to come out with an output. But what you're seeing on your screens, that's how patients, potential consumers, are searching and making healthcare decisions, right? They are searching, they're comparing, they're making these decisions based on what they can easily find, what AI prioritizes, whether or not that is true, fair, accurate, or even the complete story. And they're absolutely not waiting on us to craft these perfectly curated info sheets about our doctors. This is how folks are searching now. My own father, he's remarkably spry. He is 78 years old. He plays tennis literally every morning and would have been obsessed with yesterday's keynote speakers. He was recently diagnosed with a serious health condition. And the first thing he did was go to AI. So we know we do not have to be tech savvy to use AI. It is incredibly simple. It is too easy, and folks are using it right now as we speak. So when you're taking a look at that output on your phones, what it is for our providers is it's uncomfortable. Because I've heard many folks say that shopping for care is like shopping on Amazon or shopping on Walmart. But I truly beg to differ. Those are not one-to-one, because when I go on Amazon and I type in clay court tennis shoes, I am not going to see someone's photo, someone's name, someone's education background, and a list of their personality traits. This is completely different. This is very personal. And providers have come up to us over and over again worried about the bias, about fairness, about being judged without context. So as leaders in the health system, we knew it was our responsibility to take control of that narrative and to anchor it in fair, verified, contextual comments that we receive every single day, and we receive thousands of them. So what we did is we decided to create a structured process to publish our comments online. And when I mean our comments, I mean everything: the positive, the negative, the neutral, the mixed, and we're going to talk about that. And as we stand here and talk about our journey and talk about our philosophy, we're not going to pretend like it was a walk in the park. I mean, folks have their concerns. They've had them before. They continue to have them. But what we did is we tried to face those concerns with integrity. And we tried not to impose transparency onto our providers, but instead work with them to create like a fair, collaborative process. So we're going to talk through with you today about why a provider-centric approach to transparency is so important. And I did forget the clicker, so thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
All right, so if it wasn't obvious already, our providers were not knocking down our doors to participate in this program. To let you in on a little secret and a spoiler alert, actually, this was not even our first attempt. We attempted to publish our comments online back in 2017. And given the landscape was a little bit different, right? AI wasn't as sophisticated. The search engines weren't prioritizing the same things they are now. But the limiting factor was that we did not have our providers' trust and our providers' buy-in at that point. So today we're going to walk through with you why going transparency is important, why a provider-centric approach is even more important, and we're going to walk through literally 8 concrete steps that we took to make this a success, from going from a 1 specialty pilot to now over 13 specialties in less than a year. And lastly, what I think is going to be the most important part of this talk is that we're going to share the messy parts. There were parts where we had to pivot, to rethink, to re-strategize, literally stop in our tracks and try again. And why we're doing this and why we're telling you about this is because that's the heart of today's session, right? Transparency is not just something we owe our patients. It's not just something we ask of our providers, but it's something that we on this stage are practicing here with you. So we're excited to actually share all of the bumps in the road. So to dive right in, Mount Sinai Health System, we are a not-profit academic medical health center. We are in New York City. We span New Jersey, Westchester, Long Island, and even Florida. We have 7 hospitals, 1 behavioral health center, and we have a really growing big ambulatory footprint. We have over 400 ambulatory practices, and we see about 6 million visits a year. So in the Mount Sinai Health System space, we have 48,000 employees, but we knew we wanted to focus this work specifically in our ambulatory space, so we needed to understand the scope of that. And that would mean 32 distinct specialties and about 2,000 physicians and advanced practice practitioners, or APPs, who had active patient panels and live Find a Doctor profiles. So in any meeting that Kristen and I go to in our Office of Patient Experience, we bring up this beautiful vision slide. We like to call it our snow globe slide. And Tara Vallon's here with us, and she was one of the creators of it. So what this reminds us of every time we meet as a group is something that I know everyone in this room knows to be true, that experience, safety, and quality are interconnected. They're inextricably linked. But too often they are thought of as different domains. So this is like our daily reminder of what we're doing. And why are we doing it? It's the patient and the family at the center of everything that we do. And everything we do, we want to have a lens of equity. Now, none of what we do can be done without our engaged caregivers and our staff. So that's what you see at the bottom, the foundation of this snow globe. If we don't have that, everything above it crumbles. So it's really important for us to, again, come back to this provider-centric approach, because we knew if we didn't have their buy-in and their trust, none of this would stand. So our journey to transparency, I gave you a hint earlier, has been a quite unique one, and I kind of invite you to think about where your organization is in their transparency journey. But we started our journey back in 2014 when we went live with our ambulatory surveys. These are like the MD or the medical practice surveys, if you're familiar with them. And just 3 years later, in 2017, that's when we started to notice the consumer behavior shift. And it was then, if we were to set the scene, where like ZocDoc was peaking, your provider Google profiles were becoming more and more popular, folks were leaving reviews on there. And nationally, we were starting to see healthcare leaders actually start publishing their comments and their scores online. And this is a big shout out to Chrissy Daniels from Press Ganey, who led the charge in Utah Health, being the first health system to go live publicly with their scores and their comments. So we were inspired by them. And so our first attempt, it only got us halfway there. So in 2017, we were able to post our star ratings, but we did not yet get the buy-in and sort of have the value explained to our providers to the point where they wanted to also publish comments. Now, we did kind of reshift our strategy and get that buy-in 7 years later in December 2024 when we went live with our first pilot group, our cardiologists. And that was a really exciting time for us. But I think the time between 2017 and 2014 can be thought of as sort of like our cultural shift or evolution. Our ambulatory patient experience, or I should say our ambulatory leadership, led by Ann Dickerson, who's here with us today, she created something called the Ambulatory Patient Experience Council, and we call that our APEC. And what we did is we met on a regular basis with folks and leaders across disciplines, specialties, domains, and roles, and we reshaped how we thought about the patient voice. Because previously to that, whenever we walked in, we were the Office of Patient Experience. When we walked in, folks would think, okay, this conversation is going to be punitive, or the majority or vast majority of folks who answer the survey are disgruntled, so don't want to listen to that anyway. But we really had to kind of flip that on its head and start talking about the patient voice as something that was productive, constructive, and also we started using it as a huge recognition strategy for us. So that was really important. But this whole journey, none of it would have been possible without being inspired by other healthcare institutions. So just last year, Kristen and I, we actually came to HX 2025, and we heard a wonderful presentation by ECU Health, who did something very similar. So we were inspired by them and re-energized by them, and we remembered that this work is possible and it's necessary. So just as we were inspired last year, we'd love for you to have some takeaways to take away with you when this presentation's over. The first, again, being why transparency? What kind of convincing do you have to do to your leadership back at home to make this possible? 2, how to gain that provider's trust. We're going to be very detailed about that. And 3, what were our 8 steps to success? So you hear me talk about comment transparency and publishing online. So what does that actually even look like? I'm passing it to Kristen.
Thank you so much, Isadora, and good morning, everybody. So as Isadora mentioned earlier, comment transparency is exposing the comments from the care provider section of our ambulatory survey on our Find a Doctor profiles. This slide shows how it is currently displaying on our website. It is in our provider header next to their star rating. A user can either click on the patient comments link in the header, which will bring them down to the comments, link in, to the comments. So then it will bring, A user can either click on the patient comments link in the header, which will bring them down to the comments section of the profile, or they can navigate from the left-hand menu. Currently, comments are being shown on a rolling 12-month basis to ensure the most updated comments are shown and to keep the comment fresh. The most recent 10 comments are shown on the first load of the profile page. My colleagues on the digital marketing web development team added a View More component to allow users to view more comments if they choose. By showing the comments on the 12-month rolling basis, we also are giving the providers opportunity to improve based on the patient comments and for them to see the progression of this improvement, especially if they previously received a negative comment. So why did we decide to do this? Based on our activity earlier and what we see in our own research, the way someone is searching for their healthcare needs has changed and continues to change at a seemingly rapid pace, especially with the emergence of AI tools. So through the data shared from our partners here at Press Ganey, the number one deciding factor for patients in choosing their healthcare is user-generated content, or ratings and reviews from other patients. In years past, the reliance from both patients and health system leadership was in quality rankings, such as US News and World Report. Search engines and AI tools prioritize those sites with user-generated content, so if we did not implement transparency, we would continue to lower our position in search results to those other websites that do surface user-generated content. Before going live with transparency, there was a heavy reliance on third-party tools such as ZocDoc, Healthgrades, and Google. From a marketing purview, we still need to utilize these tools to bring patients to our health system. Over the last 5 years, we've focused on optimizing our website for digital access, which along with comment transparency also included going live with online scheduling and beginning to build an integration with Epic tools so prospective and current patients can use our website as their one-stop shop. They could research the provider, read other patient comments, and if the provider meets their needs, they can move forward with booking their appointment. So structuring our data to work within AI tools has been a main focus for our digital marketing team across all our websites. Specifically with our Find a Doctor profiles, it became crucial for us to add the patient reviews to our website profiles. In the past, our focus had been on showing in the first page of search results on Google. These days, users don't have to scroll through search results and can rely on the AI mode. So we need to grab their attention immediately. Therefore, the information needs to be available for the AI tools to create this summary that is crafted for the user. So a question for you all to ponder on from our activity earlier. In the summary that AI created for you, what in those results would make you choose or not choose moving forward with booking an appointment? So this slide visualizes the journey a patient goes on in looking for a provider and the role transparency plays within that journey. By adding the reviews to our website, it allows our providers to be surfaced in search engines, that listing linking back to our website, and allows them to book an appointment and hopefully become part of our Mount Sinai health system to continue to use our tools for theirs and their family's healthcare needs and continue the cycle of providing feedback for other patients to use in their own journey. So before we show you how we implemented, we want to show you that comment transparency really does work. So here's where we are in our program. As Isadora mentioned, we went live in December of 2024 with cardiology and have since gone live with 1,000 providers, 13 specialties, and have published 35,000 comments. The results of our first go live with our cardiology providers have shown initial success. As part of the other digital initiatives at Mount Sinai, we have seen year over year an 11% increase in total appointment bookings for the cardiology providers with published comments, and a 42% increase for these providers in online bookings made through the Find a Doctor profiles. We've also seen more engagement with our website, with a 10% increase in page views to these profiles year over year. And I will now pass the mic back to Isadora.
Thank you, Kristen. So when we were embarking on this journey, we read many, many case studies, many of which mentioned that if you publish your results publicly, that you're going to start to see your patient experience scores increase. So we were really interested in that, and we wanted to look into it. So we looked at the 9 months worth of data that we had, and we actually saw that this was working for our group as well. So here on the screen, you are seeing 3 care provider questions. These are like the main 3 communication questions on the medical practice survey. We saw that compared to pre to post transparency, the average increase was 0.35 points on the mean score. Now, I'm not seeing anyone hold their breath for 0.35 points, but I do want to prove to you how significant that is. The first reason being this is an incredibly, incredibly competitive database. And this is a specialty that's already very high performing. They're in the 96, that's A++++, right? But when you think about percentile ranks and think about how you compare it to others in a national database, that if we're looking at that first question, care provider explanation of problem condition, where they jumped 0.45 points, that first pre-transparency score, what is it, a 96.17? That landed the provider in the 57th percentile. The fact that that's a 57th percentile is a presentation for another day. But the next one, the jump, right, to 96.62, that lands the provider in the 77th percentile. That's a 20 percentile point jump for less than a 0.5 mean score change. Even better yet, I'm going to get you guys with this one. Those 3 care provider questions, if you aggregate them together, that actually is our star rating. So we use those exact questions to feed our star rating, which, as you guys know, has already been published since 2017. If a provider jumps 0.35 points with these scores here, that brings a provider from a 4.8 star rating to a 4.9 star rating. And you tell me, if you see a 4.8 next to a 4.9, same qualifications, which one are you choosing? So this reminded us of that virtuous cycle of publishing your verified comments, right? And it also reminded us that if you do transparency thoughtfully, and it can, of course, benefit the patient, but benefit the provider as well. So we talked to you about why we did this, we talked to you about the results, and now we're gonna go step by step in terms of how we did this and the lessons learned along the way. The first thing we wanted to do is get a new mindset. We really needed to brush off what happened in 2017, and we needed to think about what is important to people when change exists, specifically and especially change that's personal. So we referred to something called the SCARF model. It's an acronym, and it was developed by Dr. David Rock. It stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And what we were able to do with the SCARF model is that the SCARF model, it touches on the core human needs, especially when a new project is being introduced or a new initiative. So one of these core needs in someone was going to be triggered based on a change. And for each person, that core need might be different. So this helped us be productive and proactive, I should say, in terms of understanding what the potential concerns that providers were going to have about transparency. And so this was really important to us. So when we were going to present to providers, the first thing we would do was the business case, kind of like how we started our presentation today with you. But then we had to validate the emotional component. So as an example, status, S. The provider would be thinking to themselves, am I going to be judged by this? Is this punitive? We had to make it very clear that this was going to be a recognition approach and that we were helping them build their business, build their practice, build their reputation. For certainty, they needed to have clarity that about which comments were going to be published, which weren't going to be published, which safeguards were in place. Was their chief bought into this? Were the people they trust, do they trust us? A, autonomy. They needed to know that their voice was going to be heard throughout this process and that they were going to have a say in what happens. So the SCARF model really just allowed us to kind of remind ourselves that in each step of the process, we needed to touch on each of these 5 core needs and make sure we had an answer for each of them. So I'll now pass it to Kristen to get us going with step number 1.
Thank you, Isadora. So step 1, put the right teams together from the beginning. Isadora and I are up here today as the co-leads of this program from patient experience and digital marketing sides. However, this program does not get launched without our operations, IT, or as we refer to this team as at Mount Sinai as digital and technology partners, our clinical provider partners, and our ambulatory patient experience council. It was crucial to engage each of the teams from the discovery phase of this program so everyone knows what to expect throughout the process to getting to launch, to be part of each step and provide feedback as we communicated this program to each of the service areas, providers, and leadership. Though we each had our group tasks and timelines in the overall project plan, we worked so closely together and became extensions of each other's teams, which has contributed to the success of this project. One of the biggest lessons learned was engaging our clinical providers early in the process, especially in how we work to ease the concerns of other providers in seeing what patients say, both negative and positive, being front and center on their website profiles. Step 2, define the goals. In any meeting we went to, whether it be with our colleagues on our respective teams or the service lines, we reiterated the goals of the project from a patient perspective, where the hospital website is their one-stop shop for the information they need, for providers to hear firsthand the grateful voices of their patients and the opportunity to grow their communication based on the patient's feedback, and lastly, for the health system to drive patient experience and business performance by increasing views to our website and increasing appointment bookings. Step 3, secure organizational buy-in. As Isadora mentioned, one of the biggest lessons learned in our first attempt in patient transparency in 2017 was to secure organizational buy-in in the beginning of the process. It was important for us to begin with a department that was both an executive leadership priority in terms of building business and one engaged with their patient experience data. Another key element was leadership support. When we presented this project to the cardiology team, we had full support from their chair, who explained in that same meeting that he had done this previously at Cleveland Clinic and put ease in the providers that this is a positive change, knowing that it could be a difficult change for them. It taught us to focus on the benefits of the program and to validate the provider feelings towards it, leading with both the data aspect as to why this would be successful, but also the investment the institution is making in the providers and their success. Though we have had challenges with other departments, which we will get into shortly, once we launched with cardiology, we had another group that had a different understanding of the healthcare business and wanted to expedite being part of the program. They stopped us in the middle of our presentation and asked, how fast can we go live? Step 4, put together a group of providers that will help get the word out about the program and be ambassadors for this work. They give the provider lens to the process to make sure each step is being thought through. They help their peers to embrace this change and aid in helping them improve based on the patient feedback if needed. By having the Provider Advisory Council, which we call PAC, other providers being onboarded into the program can feel more at ease that it is not just the corporate or business groups putting this on them. It is a partnership with the support of their clinical peers. The PAC meets once a month for 1 hour via Zoom, where our group updates them on the progress of the program and where they can discuss and rule on any appeals that come in. So here are the members of our PAC from all different specialties and locations throughout the health system, 2 of whom are here with us today. We started with 3 doctors who were hand-selected by department and health system leadership. In various faculty and practice meetings, leadership encouraged the providers to join. We are grateful to the 8 on this slide, excuse me, who decided to be part of this group. Being a witness to their discussions and thoughtful decisions when appeals come through have taught me so much more about this work than I could have imagined I would learn when we started. Our PAC meetings take place on Friday afternoons, and I promise you, it is the only Friday meeting I can say I look forward to. Step 5, build fair and consistent publication rules. In partnership with our Provider Advisory Council, we built guidelines around the comments that would be published, both positive and negative, and rules for the comments that would not be published. Any comments that contain PHI and PII, comments around experience other than with the provider, such as anything around medication management, billing, front desk staff, or a provider's physical attributes. We did have a provider who noticed a trend in bias against female providers when it comes to whether they smiled or not. And lastly, comments that mention other providers by name. Our biggest takeaway was to listen to the feedback of our providers and remain adaptable to update these rules and guidelines.
Thank you, Kristen. So step 6 was building out our provider review and appeals process. So now that we had this super robust criteria of what to be published and the rules that were actually created by the PAC themselves, we thought back to our SCARF model, and that big letter A kept kind of like popping up at us, so that autonomy. We wanted to make sure that providers had the opportunity to review their comments before they would be published. So what we did is we kind of plastered this process map up at every meeting and presentation we went to, because we wanted it to be very clear what the steps were happening on the back end were. We didn't want there to be any surprises. We didn't want them to think anything was happening behind the scenes. So we made it clear what steps were happening and then which step they were responsible for. And a lot of this work could not be done without the transparency tool, Press Ganey's transparency tool, which lives under the consumer experience umbrella. But I'll walk through the steps really quickly. Step 1 is all comments from the care provider section of that ambulatory. They get fed into a transparency tool. Step 2 is there's a team of people called the managed services team who actually review every single one of those comments, and I mean there are thousands of them. And they either approve, reject, or edit, because we do allow for editing of our comments. And they're really familiar with our publication rules. They're really familiar with our organization. And then step 3 would be where the provider comes in. This is the opportunity where providers will receive a list of their comments that were already approved by the managed services team, and they could take a look at them. And that list comes through a report, and it's called the Spotlight Report. So how does the Spotlight Report work? When we're first going live with a specialty, we send providers 12 months worth of comments. because we want patients to have the opportunity to scroll through a couple of comments, see a good robust number on there. And every month thereafter, they receive a spotlight report that just contains the comments that were received in the previous month. Now, we're very confident that the comments that are coming up in our spotlight reports follow our criteria, but of course there are things we cannot be privy to, maybe like specific things to individuals or practices or things we might not catch. So we do want to give the opportunity for a provider to appeal any of these comments. So you're seeing a big pink box, that's the appeal button. The provider can easily click that appeal button. A pop-up window will appear, and it's an Outlook window that is already pre-programmed with the sender information and the verbatim comment. And what we ask of our providers is just that they leave a thoughtful appeal reasoning and to mention which of the rules they think that comment is violating. And we ask for them to be thoughtful in this process just because we don't want over-abuse of the appeals process, right? If we make it too easy and it's just one easy click, then we could be in other types of trouble. So we want it to be a thoughtful review. What I'm showing up here are detailed steps of what happens next. Once a comment is appealed, that then sits in something called a paused queue. So it doesn't get published with the rest of the comments that were reviewed, and it doesn't get totally rejected. What happens is we bring the PAC together. As Kristen mentioned, we meet once a month for an hour. The ops team, we present the appeals to the PAC anonymously. The PAC discusses amongst themselves. They vote anonymously as well. And the majority decision determines the outcome. And an appeal can either be approved, rejected, or rejected with modifications. And we make sure to let the provider know what the decision was over email. And of course, if the appeal was rejected, meaning that comment will not be published, will be published. Appeal, it's like a double negative. Appeal rejected comment will be published. We make sure that we explain why, the thought process behind it, and we do also flag for coaching opportunities. Now, since we've gone live with our appeals process, which happened back in January 2025, the PAC members have met to review 130 comments or appeals. And that's less than 1% of the total number of comments that we've gone live with. So that's pretty impressive. For us, I think that's telling of that the steps that we took before the Spotlight report are working. But of those 130 comments, 53% of them, 130 appeals, 53% of them have been approved, meaning those comments will not be published. And to me, I think that that also means that this process step is working, right? There are things that we're not catching. There are things that we do not want to publish that our providers are able to catch for us. And I think it's also building trust, because for them to know that the appeals process is not merely symbolic or merely a facade, but that there are, committed, there's an impartial committee behind the scenes really reviewing every single appeal with full consideration. I think that's important for the trust building of this. Now, step 7 is creating supportive structures, resources, toolkits. We want to make it really easy and really comfortable for providers to come to us if they need support or they have any questions. So we tried to diversify the type of resources that we provide. The first and probably the most robustly distributed resource that we have is called our Frequently Asked Questions document. It's our FAQ. It's a live document. It's constantly updating. Every time we get a new question, we're putting it on the FAQ. And it answers things all the way from why are we doing this, to which of our competitors are also doing this, to, I'm having trouble appealing, how do I troubleshoot? So we really span the gamut of the questions that we put in this FAQ. The second resource that's super tangible and really impactful was created by our very, very wonderful patient experience improvement coaches, Sabrina Maniello and Mindy Morris, who are here with us today. These tip sheets were created for each of the 5 care provider questions on the survey. They have recommendations, actions, tips, suggestions of how to better communicate with patients, and they're also available for one-on-one coaching, so a bunch of folks have taken them up on that for didactic learning and role playing. So that for folks who want that one-on-one support, that's available. And then the third option we have is this group training. It's called our physician communication training, and it's led by one of our PAC members, Dr. Kuhn, who's here with us today. And that's for folks who want a little bit more of that sort of group mentality, sort of group training, maybe not comfortable totally on the one-to-ones. Our last step that we're going to share with you today is promote, 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 roadshow, roadshow, roadshow. There's no better way to get this information out there than to meet with folks in person or over Zoom, but to really be able to answer their questions in real time. And we have a couple of lessons learned from these roadshows. The first is that you want to bring example comments of what they can expect to see online. What we started to do is months before the specialty was going to go live, we set them up with something called a provider burst report or a provider dashboard. Some of you may be familiar. It's available in PG Fusion. That was able to get them starting to be comfortable to even reading the types of comments that they receive, start getting them comfortable talking about it, and getting comfortable maybe even escalating if they needed to. So be able to get that help before the comments were going to be published. The second thing we did is we made sure to have champions at the meetings with us. So we either invited a PAC member or a physician or administrator who saw that this work was helping build success within their space. We invited them to come to give testimonials to build our credibility. And every time we met with a new specialty, we made sure that their leadership was on the call. We made sure that they introduced us, they introduced the program, and then we would just step in for the details. But the physicians and providers needed to know that their leadership was bought into this work too. So something that's really interesting we think about a lot is how busy our providers are, right? They probably get hundreds of emails a day, not even to mention the epic chats that they probably have to read through. This was kind of challenging for us because we wanted to take a look at how frequently are these spotlight reports that contain their comments set to go live, how frequently are those being opened? So we asked Press Gate to send us an open email rate report. 55% of the spotlight reports were being opened. Now, we kind of took that as a win, honestly, because, I mean, these folks are incredibly busy. This is an email that doesn't have to do with their clinical duties, right? So to get more than half of our providers to open this email we thought was pretty impressive, but of course, we have a long way to go. We're trying to think and be more creative about the types of reminders we send out, where we send reminders, where they're posted, who sends them. So this is learning in progress, and if any of you guys have a good idea, please come up to us afterwards. But we're excited to keep diving into this and learning more about this. And I'll pass it to Kristen to give us a quick bonus tip.
So last bonus step, reiterate the importance of the online provider profile data. Because as I mentioned before, Mount Sinai is in a huge overhaul and overall digital access. And it's critical to remind and work with the service lines at every chance we get to ensure that their online data is accurate and up to date. This is the information patients are finding on our website and through the search tools.
So after 1 year of prep, 50 plus road shows, we are going live tonight. Right, Kristen?
Stop right there.
Stop
right there. As all of our teams were set to go live, we received an email at 4:30 from our ENT providers who were part of our phase 1 originally with cardiology, with a letter asking us not to publish their comments. They were expressing valid concerns about not being comfortable with this initiative.
And it was really, really difficult for us, obviously. We'd been working on this for like over a year. And it was a vulnerable moment because clearly we didn't do something right. We followed all those 8 steps. So we were like, oh my gosh, what could be going wrong? But they sent us a letter, and it was a very detailed letter. And what we did kind of in return was we took every one of their good points, created like a table, and responded to each one of those points. And we learned a lot throughout that process. A couple of things that we learned. Number one, remember the smiling comment Kristen mentioned? That was something we learned from our ENT providers. They brought up the fact that there is racial and gender bias in some of these comments. And that's the unfortunate reality that we live in. But the survey itself is not biased, of course, but the folks who respond can be. So we had to start creating sort of these sub-bullets to our rules, and that's all about being flexible. So we created a sub-bullet about gender and racial biases, and that's something we ask the providers to flag if they start seeing those, especially in their spotlights, if we weren't able to catch them. Another example is, this is the ENT specialty, right? And so they talk to us a lot about how they're a unique specialty in which they sometimes do like reconstruction and revision procedures. And sometimes the patients really want something, and they believe clinically it might not be the best thing to do, might not be the safest thing to do. And patients go to the comment section and complain about that. So we created another sub-bullet under our rule number 2, which is irrelevancy with the care experience. And we made it very clear that we are going to reject any comment that is a disagreement with the care plan, because we choose to stand on the side of our providers to believe that their clinical knowledge is the best, and to go with it. So there are a couple of things we had to adjust along the way. The last thing that they mentioned that I'll bring up here is they said patients are not aware that their comments are going to be published online. They just think they're responding to a survey. And we actually had to debunk that myth, because before all of this started, we created a cover letter to our survey that made it very clear that these comments could be published on our website. We even put the website domain so they can check it out. But we did say these comments might be published, but they will be anonymous. So it was a good reminder for us that we had to bring that back into the fold of things we talk about when we present to folks. So this really helped us build out our FAQ a lot more. But of course, it was challenging for us, but we took a step back. We paused for a couple months. We met with the folks, and we regained their trust. And I can proudly say they're now one of our best champions of this work, because they know that we would be step by step with them, hand-holding them throughout this process.
So as Isadora mentioned, part of our overall regroup of the entire program was to, again, make sure to emphasize not only the consumer trends and data that proves the program's success, but to incorporate all the resources Isadora mentioned to help the providers understand this change and reiterate that we are here to support them. We attended all the roadshows, multiple faculty meetings per service line to ensure we heard from as many of the providers as we could. Our group's leadership and members of our PAC engaged with health system and service line leadership to make sure all levels were on the same page, so that we were, as Isadora mentioned, able to bring ENT back into the program and turn them into the champions that they are now. As we mentioned, this was a momentary setback, but ultimately, it really helped us to move the project forward.
Yeah, and we'll wrap up soon, but we do want to wrap up with some last couple of tips. And the first is just collect your testimonials. As you're embarking on the journey, each step of the way, it's always a continuous improvement, as we mentioned. So it's really beautiful to kind of collect these quotes along the way. And we're starting to notice our patients are mentioning to their lifelong PCPs that they're noticing their comments on their website, and they're really proud of that, and it gives us pride as well to hear from patients. And to really wrap it up, we're going to leave you with some key takeaways. The first is that the story of your health system and the story of your providers, they're being told with or without you, so we recommend taking control of that narrative. Number 2, this work cannot be done without a provider-centric approach. That's where you're really going to get your buy-in. And number 3, visible support from medical directors, leadership, executive. That's what's going to help with the adoption, but more importantly, that's going to make sure that it's sustainable. And a quick rapid fire of our 8 steps, if you forgot them. Step number 1, create your team. It's not just going to be 2 people, it's going to be a team. It's going to be an army of folks. Number 2, define your goals, repeat them as frequently as you can. Number 3, generate that leadership buy-in. Number 4, create your PAC, make sure that they're thoughtful, committed, and diversify their specialties. Number 5, build out that publication rule, make it specific to your organization and your culture. Number 6, build out your appeals process. Number 7, create those supportive structures. And number 8, promote, spread the word. There's always new folks joining our health system, so it's really important to keep them updated. And we're so lucky to have 2 PAC members with us today, Dr. David Kuhn and Dr. Stephanie Wong. And they actually have a couple of words that they want to share with you and on their journey with us in this work. So thank you.
All right. As a still practicing physician, I do want to remind all of us that our doctors are human. And one of the worst experiences, if you want to ruin my day, is to tell me, go into my comments and Google myself. This is back in the day. Google myself. And that's guaranteed. You will find some fringe, search engine group that gives you comments, and it's like an N of 1, right? So I built practice in Central Harlem many, many years ago. And the way that we actually build practice is literally I would go out. I went to community groups, church groups, and hair salons to basically get all of our connectors, and it was word of mouth, right? But our word of mouth now is in my pocket. Literally, you guys can chat GBT me or use Copilot, and you will find a 50-word snippet of who I am. It's a little bit, I'll use the word transparent, but very, very vulnerable. This is a way for us to turn that around. Basically to say, let's fix the narrative, right? There are actually hundreds of really great comments about all of our physicians across the nation. And often, what we can do is put it front and center. You guys can empower your system, empower your doctors, because at the end, it really is the patient voice that speaks the most powerfully for your doctors. It's the best marketing tool. I don't need to say anything. The health system doesn't need to say anything. Our patients will say it for us. And I will say anecdotally, after we went live, so primary care went live, maybe like, we were in the second wave. We let cardiology go first. I was like, wow, you guys went to cardiology, okay. Good for you guys. I was like, I wouldn't have gone there, but okay. When primary care went live, I've been in practice for 16 years. I actually saw a bump in new patients. I was like, wow. And what was really amazing is I had new patients come in and actually say to me, you have such glowing comments. Like, everybody loves you. I was like, oh, thank you. You just made my day. I had no idea. But that is actually how you retain doctors and how you do this. Mount Sinai is a physician-led system. And I think that engaging your physicians immediately in this process actually helps defang it. It helps create safety, but it also helps us feel like we're empowered, that we are able to help make the decisions and co-create it. So I actually am a great supporter of this. I think it also helps quite a bit with quality, right? Many doctors don't truly understand that patient experience is a quality metric. And so just remind them that good patient care equals good quality. If we talk to you guys and say that you guys are doing a great job, let's tout it. Let's make a big deal about it. So I think it's a great program. A lot of my doctors have been very positive about it, maybe a little bit scared at first, but I haven't heard any complaints about it. I'm gonna let Dr. Kuhn go, because I think he has more to say.
Well, I'll keep it short. I first want to thank our patient experience team, and I want to give a shout out to Isadora and Kristen for this incredible presentation and all the work done leading up to it, and they deserve a round of applause, so first and foremost. A really amazing job. When I was approached to be a part of the PAC a year and change ago, I said yes. I say yes to pilots stupidly, ? Right? I'm sure I like having a seat at the table when change comes. I found that to be advantageous. But for this particular initiative, I jumped at it because, as Stephanie points out, as we all know, patient experience equals healthier patients. And that's why I got into healthcare a few decades ago. And so that's why I really embrace this. I get passionate about physician communication skills, which I'm involved with Mount Sinai as well, because it all equals the same endpoint, which are healthier patients, better clinical outcomes, not just busier practices, more robust practices. All of the metrics that we care about in healthcare benefit by shining a light on these tools. Our physicians, I'm convinced, what's impressed me about coming to this conference, and thank you for letting me tag along, and thank you, Press Ganey, I had no knowledge about the depth and sophistication that goes into that star rating under my shining, smiling face, right? I know that 99% of our physicians, our providers, have no knowledge at all about what goes into that behind the scenes. Right now, at this moment, they're in clinic trying to get through their day, and they want to get their work done, they're in basket, clean that up, because tomorrow they're waking up and doing the same thing. They care about this. They care about that star rating. They care about these reviews. But, as we in our system have begin to shine a light on this, an increasingly bright light over the last year and change, there's grumbling that goes on. Great. Yet this is another thing Mount Sinai is asking me to care about, on top of all the other things I have to do. So I'm so proud of the patient experience team for having the thoughtful, strategic planning to say, let's get the providers involved too, because you have to have buy-in. And you have to engage the providers with their peers so that they recognize that this is not punitive, this is value added. This is opportunity for you. If you're willing to reflect, you can grow, because this is a skill. The skill of giving your patient the best experience is no different than reading an EKG or taking out a gallbladder. With reflection, humility, and work, it can get better, and you can grow on that. And so it's been a thrill for me to be a part of the pack, to give our peers, the knowledge and the comfort knowing that you've got physicians on your side who are here to listen to you and give you that level of transparency. And I also just want to give a final shout out, and I'll finish up, to our PAC team for the willingness to evolve. It is very much a dynamic process, and that is obviously key. To continue to learn, whether it was the ENT folks giving their pushback on this, and I can say as being part of the PAC, we keep evolving. We keep creating new rules and say, oh, we didn't think of this scenario. And so we're always reflecting, always growing. And it's always a pleasure to be a part of those kinds of processes. And I'll finish with that. Thank you. And I believe we have time for Q&A.
We have time for a couple questions. All right. Well, come on up. I may not be able to get this mic out.
Hi, thank you guys very much. That was awesome, and I love that you have your physician peers up on stage with you, so that's wonderful. My name's Heather. I'm with Bon Secours Mercy Health, and we are blessed to do this work with Press Ganey as well. A question for you, though. Can you explain a little bit more about the gender and racial bias in the comments? Did you say you saw emojis or you saw physical things written out? Because I'd like to understand that a little bit better.
Yes. So we didn't see emojis necessarily, but we did see things written out. So for example, so in our second rule, which is irrelevancy of the care experience with the experience with the care provider, some of our sub-bullets are about clothing, like appearance, accent, things like that. And then we added in the smiling once we saw that comment come through as well. So what we do in terms of like accent, clothing, appearance, we reject both the positive and the negative. Like, we don't want any of those on there. So if they said, she smiled all day, she was amazing, no, it's not going up there. So we kind of got both sides of it and said it wasn't right. Does anyone want to add anything to that? No, okay.
Hi, the review of your comments, is that done by a person, like you, so somebody's doing that? How many resources are you using for that?
So it's a team of 3 people, and they're called the Managed Services Team, and they're employed by Press Ganey, so we use them for that. And we thought it'd be better to use people than to use an AI system.
That was my next question, is have you ever thought about putting the criteria in AI to actually filter out the comments that you don't want?
So in our road shows, we've kind of learned that folks feel more comfortable when people are reading the comments. I think with AI, they might still have the impression, although it might be true or might not be true, that things are going to be not caught, or like the healthcare nuance might not be there. So we've trained up these 3 folks to read through all the thousands of comments. And honestly, they're really quick at it, so it's kind of impressive how quickly they can get that done. Yeah.
I appreciate your work, everybody. This is hard stuff, so your honesty in your journey is really refreshing. Really just practical question. I love the workflow that you had. It's just around timing, right? You have a monthly report that is sent to all your docs. They're given an opportunity to review. What, like, day of the week or month do you send that out? How long do you give them to review it? Just some basics on that, because timing is of essence, right? I'm going to schedule this thing to go out on your website, so how long do you give them, and have you gotten any feedback around that timing? Thanks.
Yes, so we want to give as much time as possible. So what we do for the first Spotlight report, that one that contains 12 months worth of comments, we give them 4 weeks to review that. And we send reminders like usually after 2 weeks, and then definitely 1 week before, and then we try to send it like day of, because we know most of the appeals come in like the day before. But we do want to say you have a whole month to read this one email. That may take you 5 to 7 minutes to read, because on average, the 12-month comment range is about 30 to 35 comments. So it's not that many. It really takes 5 minutes to read through it, but we give them a month to do so. And then every month thereafter, when they are looking at the comments received from just the previous month, we give them 2 weeks to review it, because it's much less comments, maybe like 5 to 7 comments. And what we do is we send out the first Spotlight report. is kind of like up to us depending on when we want to go live with the specialty. But every report thereafter goes out the second Monday of every month. So the second Monday of every month, they know the Spotlight report is going to come to their inbox in the morning. They have 2 weeks to review, and then we refresh the first of the month.
And we also try to incorporate the department administrators or the practice managers to kind of help get the word out, like, hey, look at your email, look at your report. So that team approach really comes in. Yeah, exactly.
I gotta say, I love that we're measuring the, are you opening the email rates, right? It's 55%. So we've got work to do, and that falls, I think, on both our practice managers, but on medical leadership as well. And I know it's on my agenda for our next meeting across the board, and to frankly have this now as like a standing slide in my monthly meeting with my providers, just as a gentle little reminder to open that email, because it is your profile at the end of the day.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Langston. I'm from Patient Relations at the small but mighty Caper Valley Health System. And I assist the marketing department with the Google reviews. So I attended this one to see if maybe there's a better approach to help improve ratings and whatnot. I was going to suggest maybe, I've suggested a question. Suggest that maybe incorporating the rounding with the managers for the providers and say, hey, let's check out your Spotlight questions while I got you here. That's definitely something I think our leaders in the ambulatory group would do. And then, because I'm, in patient relations, so, I see a lot of the negative comments and concerns. Would we encourage that in that letter that the patients receive, would we say, if you do have concerns that you want addressed, instead of adding them to this survey, please reach out to your patient relations advocate at blah, 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 or email blah, blah, blah. Is that something that you would suggest doing, or is that something that you could think about doing? That way they're not, putting it in the feedback survey.
Yeah, that's an interesting suggestion. I think what we do have the ability for folks to do is to leave their name and number at the bottom of the survey. So like if it is a negative comment, we tend to reach out to them if they do want to be, if they want us to know who they are. Because otherwise the survey is confidential, right? But if they leave their name and number, then we'll reach out. I think it's an interesting idea to say, reach out to this other group if you have something negative to say. But I think the whole thing about the transparency is we want to know what the negative comments are also. And we want to publish those.
Yes.
So I think for it all to feed to the same place will be a better way for us to track it.
Okay. And it's just, I'm sorry, I'm taking up some more time, but it's just sometimes I feel like we are reactive when we get the surveys, and like we want to help, but they don't leave their name or number. So we always try to add in our responses, like, please reach out to our patient relations department if you have these concerns. But I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for doing this.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We have 2 more quick questions.
And I have a double. Provider Spotlight has a ranking function. We've opted not to include it in the Provider Spotlight email that allows the provider to see where they rank organizationally. We were a little nervous about that. Quick feedback?
We removed that also.
Yeah. So you can see, like, you are ranked number 3 organization-wide. You're not doing that. All right. And the other thing is, we're looking at celebrating those 5-star providers. We have about, 35 or 40 out of maybe 500 that are 5 stars over a lot of reviews. Are you doing any sort of celebrations, and love your perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone want to take that, or I can take that one too?
Have any inside knowledge on that?
Well, I was going to use the Coleman Awards.
Yes.
So I guess the Coleman is a family foundation that celebrates those of our physicians who have top communication scores. And so we do this, I think it's every year, right?
Every year.
Annually. And so anywhere from 30 to 50 doctors who are in the top tier box or 95th percentile get celebrated system-wide. It's actually quite a great opportunity for docs to just feel recognized that their communication skills are valued and appreciated, not just by their patients, but by the whole health system, that they're doing a good job.
Yes, we use the 2 care provider questions on the survey, and whichever provider is the 95th percentile or above, they're invited. And it's really wonderful, because I think this started about 10 years ago, and we had maybe 50 providers, and now just this past year we had 117. So it keeps growing, and it's A lot of them are repeat winners, but they still come every year to the, to the celebration, so I hope we're having a good one. But yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jackie Beckerman from University of Rochester Medical Center, and we're about 3 years in, also use Press Ganey, very similar model, and the pack is probably the key. I do want to say one thing we found is we had to be sensitive to provider wellness, and there were times where just reading the comments itself, although most were beautiful, that one comment could just really put someone under. So we've worked a lot. So for example, sometimes we negotiate where it is a negative comment, but they don't have many comments up. It just happens they don't. And we'll say, you know what, we'll wait 6 months to post that, even though it fits the criteria, because we want you to have some other comments so it doesn't feel overwhelming. Like, we do a lot of that kind of, we're there for them, and we want to be as transparent as possible, but we also want to work with them and understand, hey, it's hard sometimes, to read all these. One question I did have, what are you doing to, if someone clearly has some issues and they need some support, what are you offering them to get better?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a handful of folks where that's kind of the scenario. There was one case in which we did have to pause go live for that individual, and we kind of brought it to their leadership, and we said, what are some actual coaching opportunities that we can bring to this person? So we had a slide about our resources, but what helps, I think, with that person specifically would have been the one-on-one coaching from our patient experience improvement coaches, the role-playing, the shadowing them, to really listening to how these conversations are going about. And the thing is, a lot of times, they want to do the right thing, they're just too busy, and they feel like the patients might feel like they're being rushed. So there are situations where it's once in a blue moon, but we do pause and we work with them one-on-one for a couple months and then bring them back into the fold. Yeah.
Please join me in thanking the Mount Sinai team.